blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
We'll be fine.
Dead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday's Agenda with myself, Sean Bradbury, and Ian Doyle to my left.
Hello.
We're going to talk about the future today, and the future of two men in particular, that is Steven Gerrard and Jurgen Klopp. There feels, Doyley, a bit of an air of inevitability, if I can get that word out properly, about both of them and where they may end up in the future. So let's deal with them in turn. Jurgen Klopp, obviously, his contract with the Reds runs till 2022. And everyone at the club, owners, Tom Werner, John Henry, I think it's been made clear that they want him to stay for as long as he wants, and it's a question that comes up to him quite a lot. 2 full seasons left then after this one with the Reds. What do you think, in terms of his situation, what do you think will be the determining factors as to whether he will extend his contract, whether he will stick around?
Well, I don't think he will, so there will be no extenuating circumstances.
You think his 7-year rule?
He'll do his 7-year rule, will apply again. I think, we've seen what the Liverpool job can do to any manager. You've seen it can't. The toll that it takes both on the health physically and mentally. And, he will need to refresh himself. It's what he did after Dortmund. He took a sabbatical, didn't he? And I think he'll do exactly the same thing again. So sorry, everybody. That's my own no knowledge of what he's thinking or anything like that. It's just my feeling is that he will do the near 7 years. Liverpool already won the Champions League. You'd like to think, certainly the way things are going this season, won a couple more trophies in that time. Then he'll leave. Liverpool obviously want to keep him. Why wouldn't you want to keep him? You'd argue he's the best manager in the world at the moment. Certainly, he won the UEFA. He won the FIFA award, didn't he? Yeah, the FIFA best. So he's also been voted the best coach in the world. So Liverpool aren't going to get anybody better than him at the moment. So it's going to be an interesting call when it comes to it. But yeah, I think for Klopp's own sake, I think genuine, because he's 7 years outside of his home country as well. And he's made Liverpool a second home. I think he might just want to go home. Everybody's got a home, and I think he might just want to go back to Germany.
I can certainly see the argument. Is there not maybe a sense, though, that it's difficult right now, isn't it? He's locked in this titanic battle with Guardiola, which has seemed to follow him around. Obviously, he had it at Bayern and Dortmund, and now they got it at Liverpool and City. Could there not be a situation where it gets a little bit easier for him? Maybe Guardiola pops off, goes to manage someone else. Obviously, this is the kind of the ultimate best case scenario, but Liverpool are the dominant force in the league, and there's the opportunity maybe to extend his contract a few years and keep racking up trophies. Do you think that there could be a situation which enables him to stay?
There could, but then he could argue the case saying, well, look, I've done it all here now, so it's time to go off and do something else. I mean, again, just guessing, but my own gut feeling on the matter is that he will do the 6.5 years, 6 3/4 years. He's very much a man of his word, a man of principle, and if he's got it set in his mind that he wants to do that, which he's never ever hinted at anything otherwise, has he? He's always said, like, it'll come to the end of my contract, we'll have to see what happens kind of thing. Because you just say it's still 2.5, nearly 3 years off, so it's not anytime soon. So he's probably not thinking about it as much, but in terms of his long-term plan, it'll be dependent on what his family want to do as well, doesn't it?
Of course.
Because they might say, come on, let's go off. And the only interesting, I know you're going to ask me in a bit. In fact, ask me now, because what was he discussing, which job he may go to?
Yes, the Germany job. He was asked, I think in the German press, obviously this week, about whether that's the one for him when Lowe, I think Joachim Löw's contract goes to 2022 as well. So obviously there's an easy one for the media to speculate about whether it's one in, one out. And I think at the end of the suggestion I saw was that at the end of the World Cup in 2022, Lowe could go, Klopp could have a little sabbatical, which is obviously would only be a few months, and then potentially come in and be in place to take the Germany job up. And he didn't dismiss it, did he? He said he's totally happy with what he's doing now. But if the question came up, he would have to consider it of the Germany job. So do you think that is the obvious move?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the World Cup, the 2022 one, is going to be in November/December. So it's not as if he'd leave Liverpool in the summer and then go straight into the Germany job. He'd have about, as you say, 4 or 5 months off. The thing about the Germany job is, I think what Klopp loves is the day-to-day involvement. And no matter what international job he'd take, he wouldn't get that. So I'm intrigued as to what his actual view of that is. But, he'll be another 2.5, nearly 3 years older, won't he? Well, he'll be 3 years older by then. He may just decide, I want to take it a little bit easier. I will get in the people who can help me with this. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take that job. It is the obvious one because, let's face it, I don't think he's going to go back to Germany and take charge of Bayern Munich.
No.
And he won't go. I don't think he'll go back to Dortmund. He doesn't strike me as somebody who likes to go back to places. I mean, otherwise, he may very well finish up at Mainz again at the end. Again, we're just guessing, but the obvious job for him to take now would be Germany. I can't see him going. He did have the chance of Real Madrid, didn't he? He wasn't massively keen. I don't think he certainly wasn't keen on Manchester United when his name got brought up.
True.
That was mentioned again today. Robbie Fowler talking about it. So. Yeah, he's chosen well with his jobs. Mainz obviously is where he played a lot of his career, and he took over there. That was a natural progression for him. Dortmund, when you look at it, was patently obvious, and not quite as obvious that was taken over at Liverpool, which, if ever there was a marriage that was made in heaven, it was between Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, and the supporters, because he is just a fan. Well, okay, I'll rephrase that. He's not just a fan, but he is the ultimate fan on the sideline. He acts in the way that probably any Liverpool fan would if they were in charge of the club. So he's called them three right. If he wants to go to Germany, he would back against him.
Indeed. Well, let's move on to the second fella who could fit this whole jigsaw. If we're going on this working theory of what could happen in 2022, Steven Gerrard, obviously now in his second season in charge of Rangers. We all saw what he did in the youth coaching setup at Liverpool, and obviously his Liverpool record and career, his love for the club. It's clear every single fan knows all about that. If he then, Doyle, is to potentially come and be the man who takes over from Klopp, what more do you think he needs to prove at Rangers? So my sneaking suspicion is, I don't know if there's enough he can prove at Rangers to suggest he would immediately have what it takes to take over at Liverpool. I kind of feel there needs to be another club in between, like a further stepping stone. But then the other side of that argument, I suppose, is you would imagine that what Klopp leaves in place in terms of legacy, in terms of the structure of the club, everything at Melwood, obviously the ownership and the kind of strategies they pursue, you could potentially argue a good situation would be in place for a relatively, less experienced manager. But do you think he can do enough at Rangers to prove that he's ready for Liverpool?
Well, it's an interesting one. I remember seeing, I can't remember what I was talking about it. We were talking about Zinedine Zidane taking over at Real Madrid. He said, how come he gets that chance and he's never, he wouldn't go and take charge of, like, I don't know, let's just say Macclesfield or something stupid like that, right? But the reason for that is because what Macclesfield need is not what Zinedine Zidane has experienced throughout his career. He's never been playing for a team that's, battling against relegation from the Football League, in the lower leagues, dealing with those kind of players. He's used to playing with top players, working with top players, that kind of level, which is why Real Madrid, he ended up winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row, didn't he?
Yeah.
One of them against Liverpool. Same thing with Gerrard. I think Gerrard going to Rangers, I thought it was an interesting one, because it wasn't an easy job to take. Let's be honest, if it's your first managerial job, none of them are easy. But Rangers was a little bit more difficult than most. But they're a club that get, 50,000 per home game? A little bit like Liverpool. They're in a 2-club city, a little bit like Liverpool.
Yeah.
They got the major rivals are right next door, a little bit like Liverpool. They've always got that pressure, that expectation. Rangers went out of business technically, didn't they? About, 10 years ago or something? So they've still been rebuilding from that, which is why I think Gerrard's sort of done a fine job up there while also learning the job. So it's not been easy for him. But he has surrounded himself with good people, including Michael Beale. So if he came back, there's somebody else. Gary McAllister's up there as well. There are people who know the Liverpool ethos he would probably bring with him. But I don't know whether it's nailed on that Gerrard takes over after Klopp. I agree with you. I think he may have to go somewhere else. But then it's, where does he go? Where does he go? What kind of team does he go to? Because Liverpool, Rangers, we just mentioned 50,000, all that pressure. He'll have to win some trophies at Rangers first.
Yeah.
He'll have to win at least a couple, I would suspect. Because I don't think Celtic are perhaps as good as they were under Rodgers. Don't think Neil Lennon's as good a manager as Brendan Rodgers. I don't think that's controversial to say that. So there is a chance that Gerrard can get one over there in whatever competition. It's interesting that he's done quite well in Europe with Rangers. He's got them through to the group stage twice in the Europa League, which I think is the first time they've been in it for quite some time. That's obviously leaning on his experience with Liverpool and playing so many European games. He knows how to negotiate a 2-legged tie and all that kind of stuff. So he knows that, and he knows players. I think he'll do. If he did take over at Liverpool in 2022, I think he'd. It's a strange one to even consider, because he's only been a manager for like 18 months. So I think people are perhaps jumping the gun a little bit. I don't necessarily agree with all these people who go, he could come and tarnish his legacy. And the pressure would be enormous. And we'd always be thinking about Steven Gerrard's Liverpool. It's like, no, they won't, because Kenny Dalglish had this as well. Once you got over the surprise of him taking over as manager, because he was a playing manager at the time, so it was even more surprising. It was just Liverpool whose manager was Kenny Dalglish. It wasn't like, this is just Kenny Dalglish's Liverpool. Like, that's it. So I think you know what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah,
Because obviously Gerrard never won the Premier League, as we all know, as the fans always sing, despite the fact he's not played for Liverpool for 4 years now. Don't know why they keep singing it. So opposing fans, that is. So I don't think it's nailed on that he takes over. I think there's still a long way to go. I think he's got a lot of learning to do as a manager. He knows that as well. and Liverpool will appoint who they think is the right person, because there could well be somebody just appears in the next 2.5 years or whatever, 3 years, and does something spectacular. I mean, I'm sure if, say, Klopp was coming to the end of his contract now, or just, he's going to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, you'd have said, Pochettino would be a great person to bring in. And then people are saying, Pochettino's gone stale at Tottenham. He's done, was it 5 years or something like that? And
I think so.
But this is the guy who's got them into the Champions League final and got them consistently finishing the top 3 or 4 in the Premier League, when realistically they've never been that consistent before, certainly in the Premier League era, certainly not until league finished since the early 60s. They've never been in the European Cup final before. So he's done a good job. Because he's lost some games, people will go, I'm not sure about him. So it is about, when Klopp does go, it will be about who's the best at the time. And if Steven Gerrard has been doing a good job at Rangers, he will automatically be included in the mix for that.
Absolutely. Right, well, we'll leave it there. We've kind of mapped things all out for you until 2022, so we will return then.
We will
revisit this
just
conversation.
Report on all of it in due course.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much.